Like Milli Vanilli.
Happens to me all the time.
Magic. Okay. Somebody read, oh man, I think it was Isaiah 46:10. Somebody find that real quick. Isaiah 46:10. I just kind of actually, just now, kind of sort of thought about that one. Someone find it and read what it says.
Declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel will stand, and I will do all my pleasure.
Declaring the end from the beginning. Now, in context, this is talking about, Babylon and the destruction thereof, but the end of all things has been revealed from the beginning. And we see what we have now, but if we don't understand where it came from, we miss a whole lot. Why things are the way they are today. And there's probably, I'm telling you, there's very few people that I know of like Bill that can explain it. So I hope I can get this across to you. These types of things like Bill does. I love to hear Bill when he's talking about prophecy and the way things were. He breaks it down well. All right, take a look. What is it? Temple Mount. 35 acres. For size comparison, I believe, is it Union Cemetery? Union Cemetery is 34 acres total. So you can kind of get an idea about how big this place is. You went up there, didn't you?
Oh, yes.
You went in the Dome of the Rock, right? I did not go in, but I did touch it. But I did not go in. We couldn't go in those days. We didn't go in Al-Aqsa. Did you go in Al-Aqsa?
Yes, we did.
They let you in then, too?
Yes, sir. Had to take your shoes off, though.
Oh, yeah.
Stinks in there.
Socks, doesn't it? Dirty feet. Can you wear socks?
Yeah, you can wear your socks. I wish you couldn't, but they do.
All right, let's get one row of lights. This first row of lights, somebody.
That day that he is on the trail.
Does anyone know the Muslim name for this? Haram al-Sharif, the noble sanctuary. What I want to try to do is over the next 3 or 4 times I'm up here at night. Will that work?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's 2. Is figure out why we got here. I want to take a lesson and look at Jesus on this mountain, and then I want to talk about where this mountain is going. I've done something like this, but every time you do it, you add a little something and learn a little something. And let's keep going. When you see this, what do you think of? Anybody? The gold, mainly because of the Golden Dome. You see the Dome of the Rock. That's not a mosque. That is a shrine. The mosque is the black dome on the southern end, on the bottom of that. That's the mosque. That's the real holy place there. What else does anybody think about when you see a picture of this? Anybody?
I'm thinking Jesus coming back.
Jesus coming back, getting rid of all this stuff. Probably going to be when it is. I think the peace treaty will keep this intact for a little while. Maybe not, but we'll talk about that in a later. This is modern day. I took a picture I didn't take this picture, but I got a picture from this side. This is looking east. You're looking toward the Mount of Olives where that tower is up there. And then this is the Western Wall. That's the larger stones on the bottom of that are actually the ones in Jesus' time. They've rebuilt over and over, and the top stones are a little smaller. Tom about had me half scared to death when I went over there. He's like, they'll throw rocks at you from the top, and sometimes they do. Oh, pointer. That'll work.
Don't be aiming it at nobody.
All right. I like that. So that right there. I thought it was when I pressed the button. It went off. So that is the Western Wall. Down here oh, this ain't. Let's see. We'll get them. Make sure everything's connected good here. No. This is the little walkway up onto it. that they check all your bags. And, you know, my mother was by no means someone who wore, you know, really low-cut things, but even the slightest bit of chest, they make you cover it up. I mean, I've still got the piece of cloth they gave her. It actually kind of, it's weird, it still smells like over there, I think. But, so anyway, we're going to go back in time. That's what we're doing. Going back in time. This is around around 1900. And you can see there's not a whole lot. What do you notice about the difference in these two pictures? Well, you got the walkways and even just the vegetation. There is no growth in this place unless the Jews are in the land, period. It is, Mark Twain said, who would want to come here? It is God-forsaken. There's nothing here but desert. And you see, even when you look at a satellite map today, it's all green. And everywhere around it is just brown and red, dead, nothing to it. So this is around 1900. You're actually looking south. There is Al-Aqsa Mosque. There's the Dome of the Rock. You may know what year it was built. 691. 691. Been there a long time. Long time. We'll talk about this little, the Shrine of the Spirits, or the Shrine of the Tablets. Dome of the Tablets, right there. We'll talk about that in a few weeks. Nothing else really there. No paths, no walkways. So that's really what we're looking at. We're going to go back in time one more. But before I talk about this picture, I want to talk about what happened between the destruction of this building and the creation of that building. Okay, you had this one was destroyed in AD 70. The other one wasn't built until 691 AD. So you had 600 years there, but there wasn't a whole lot going on. But I was reading, I don't know if you know this, I was reading and researching, you know, the time in between these two buildings, the temple and the Dome of the Rock. And there were two occasions where the Jews that were still there were still some Jews in there, had attempted to rebuild and restart the process of rebuilding a temple. Jewish legend has it, the first one was undone by fire. The second one was undone by an earthquake. Now, you know, all we have is extra biblical source for that, but I can see God in that, and that it was not time for the third temple to be built yet. So in those 600 years, there were a couple of attempts to get the temple back up and running, and it just didn't happen. So the Muslims got to it, and they built the Dome of the Rock. That Dome of the Rock became a church at one time during the reign of the Crusaders. But finally in 1099, when Salah ad-Din took over, you'll see if you've ever watched the movie Kingdom of Heaven, he said, what is Jerusalem worth? He says, nothing and everything. So it's worth nothing and everything to a lot of people. But to the Jews and to the Christians, there's no nothing about it. This is everything. This plot of land right here, 34 acres. At the time Christ walked the earth, this was the largest man-made structure on the planet. The platform here and the temple. This alone right here, you could fit 2 football fields side by side and another one long ways. The original temple, Solomon's temple, was smaller than 1 football field. So Herod enlarged the entire area of the platform by a huge amount. If you ever get the chance to research this Temple Mount platform and all the arches underneath and everything it took to build it, is the largest man-made structure on earth in the time of Christ. One of the cornerstones, one of the foundation stones is 586 tons. Tons. That's one rock. You saw that in the Western Wall tunnels, I'm sure. Also in the Western Wall tunnels, this is where Matthew was talking to me about it this morning. It's wild that he mentioned it. Has anybody got, was it Prime? Amazon Prime. If you got Amazon Prime, look up, it's a DVD, it's a video about Israel, and Benjamin Netanyahu takes this man on a tour of all Israel, and he takes him in the Western Wall tunnels. And basically what they have is they have this mountain, it's plain, and they go through in the history and they put, the buildings on it as they expanded it, and it really shows how they did it. You can see some pictures on it, but that video does a great job of showing you from going from just one. When we talk about Solomon's temple, it was the grandest structure of its time, but it was small compared to this one. As far as the buildings and the grandeur around it. By the way, this was one of the coolest things in Israel, if you ever get to go. This is the model. They kept saying, we're going to go see a model, of Jerusalem, and I thought, wow, we'll get to go in, we can see and touch, and those are people. It's that big. This thing it blew my mind. It's at the Israel Museum where the Shrine of the Book is, and the Dead Sea Scrolls are here too. This was the coolest thing. If I could get in there and just mess around for a few hours. I'm telling you, a week in Israel is worth 10 years of Sunday school. Just about. Okay, moving on. This is where I kind of want to get to. This is Solomon's Jerusalem. You see a big difference in Solomon's Jerusalem and Jesus' Jerusalem. Big difference. The city has expanded. But when you start looking right here, you're getting down to the bare bones of the place, and it originally wasn't very much. It wasn't very much. It was a city the Jebusites had. They had conquered it and lived there. You see the Hivites, the Jebusites, the Perizzites. When you read all those, the Jebusites are always mentioned. This, and I'm going to show this to you, is the original city right here. That's it. That's the city of David. They're excavating it now. Even more and more. They keep going down and finding more and more. But that's what David knew. Solomon built on and added this, his palace and the temple. And you can see the complex is quite a bit smaller. When we go back just a little bit, I'll show you what that looks like in today's world. That is the Temple Mount, and down in here is the city of David. Looks like a little backward comma. But it wasn't much. I mean, look how it's sprawled out today. All around through there. But this was all David knew. David's Jerusalem. And then I left you a little picture here. This is the picture we're going to leave up for a little while. David's Jerusalem. This way is south. That way is north. That way is east. That way would kind of be west. But you see there, just an empty bare plot. And that's what we're going to talk about. How did we get to what we had today, and why are buildings built where they are? When you think of the Dome of the Rock, what is it most people say? What happened there?
They believe that Abraham offered Isaac there.
Abraham offering Isaac. Of course, they believe Muhammad ascended to heaven on one of the spots, and then now they're trying to say that the Western Wall was where he tied up his steed, so he couldn't. So now that's a Muslim holy site too. They're trying to get that, but they're just trying to take it all and do any kind of denying the existence of a Jewish temple ever being there. Pretty hard to do when archaeology just keeps proving them wrong. Over and over and over. Archaeology keeps proving them wrong. But what we've got is this little city of David. Up in here, you'll have the Gihon Spring. Remember that? Where David went through, conquered the city. Just a small city. You see any rivers around it? Any major oceans? Any trading zones? Any ports? Anything of any significance in this little bitty nothing of a town? Wasn't on Joshua's radar. He wasn't really after this one. Nobody really went after it till David. So you've got just nothing. Just a little old walled city up. You can see it's up on the mountains there. And then this is where we're talking about tonight. In 1 Chronicles 21. Give me one. Yeah, give me some lights. It's dark up here. Can't hardly see. So, before we get into this, we got to talk about David a little bit. this is the end of David's life, toward the end of his reign anyway. David's been through a lot, and David and Satan have gone back and forth, and there's been battle after battle and temptation after temptation, and David is a man after God's own heart, so David always comes out on top. He always pays the consequence, but God's mercy is always evident in David's life. So if you're the devil, it's like, what now? What now? What can I go after him now? We've already got the adultery thing. He's not done that anymore because he's a man after God's own heart. He recognizes his sin and he stays away from it. As far as we know, he's not murdered anymore. He kept his word to lots of people. And then when Solomon came on the scene, he said, you take care of these people. I've kept my word. You go take care of them because they're evil men. So what do you tempt David with after years and years of losing battles with him? You may gain a temporary victory if you're the devil, but David always relies on God's mercy and God's grace and comes out the better man for it. He just keeps getting better. So now what? Let's do something inconspicuous. Let's do something that's not on anybody's radar as being really sinful. On the surface, you look at this and it's not really that bad. So let's look in 21 verse 1. He said, and Satan stood against Israel and provoked David to number Israel. I'll go ahead and tell you there are two accounts of this story. One is in one of the books of Samuel. And one is here in 1 Chronicles. The differences, people will argue they're contradictions, but you got to read in the language, such as the buying price that we're going to talk about in a minute. In the other book, it talks about God basically inciting David to do this, but we as Christians, we can say we realize God allowed Satan this temptation to happen. He allowed it. And Satan stood up against Israel and provoked David to number Israel. What is wrong with that? Really, we do a census every 10 years. Right? What's the purpose? Let's determine a population, but I'm sure it goes a little deeper than that. I'm sure it's got some financial tax, yeah, the taxes. That's a big thing there. What was David's motive here, you think?
See how strong he was.
To see how strong he was. Pride. So he's attacking his pride. And in a way that is really inconspicuous. As somebody reading this, you would think, well, that's not all that bad. But you remember when David decided to move the ark? We talked about David moving the ark, and he got a brand new wagon, and he was moving it, but it was not in the way God had prescribed. When we look at the taking of a census, David didn't follow all the steps. And David said to Joab, verse 2, and David said to Joab and to the rulers of the people, go number Israel from Beersheba to Dan, from top to bottom, and bring that number of them to me, that I may know it. And Joab answered, you need somebody like this in your life. You need somebody to say, whoa, wait a minute, look at this. The Lord makes His people 100 times so many more as they are. He makes them, even to all these other armies that are coming, He makes them 100 times stronger. He makes it seem like there's 100 times more of them than there really are. He's always there. Why are we doing this? But my lord the king, are they not all my lord's servants? Why then do you require this thing? Why will we be the cause of trespass to Israel? He needed somebody to say, hey, watch your step here. You're treading on dangerous ground. Nevertheless, the king's word prevailed against Joab. Wherefore Joab departed and went throughout all Israel and came to Jerusalem. You know, through both sets of scriptures, it took about 10 months to do this. And I'm not getting into the number and all that, the differences in number. One leaves out a couple of tribes because Joab didn't count them. And Joab gave the sum of the number of the people unto David, and they of Israel were 1,000,000 and 100,000. 1,000,000 and 100,000. Lots of people. But I don't have time to get into all that right now. And Judah was 410,000 of men that drew the sword. That's what they're numbering. They're numbering the fighting men. But Levi and Benjamin counted not among them, for the king's word was abominable to Joab. He was disgusted at this order. What were you supposed to do according to the law of Moses when you take a census? Does anybody know? There had to be something done by the men who were counted, because there is a cost. There is a price to being enrolled in God's accounted people. They had to pay a tax. There was a tax to be paid. We read nowhere here of that happening. The men had to pay, I believe it was a half shekel. And those were to be used, it was to be used for, it's in Exodus, I think it's 30:12 or 30:20, around in there. Anytime a census was taken, there had to be a tax paid. It's not called a tax, it's called a ransom. You were being placed in God's accounted people. There is a price, there is a cost to being in that number. And God was displeased with this thing, therefore he smote Israel. And David said unto God, I have sinned greatly, because I have done this thing. But now I beseech thee, I pray thee, Lord, do away the iniquity of thy servant, for I have done very foolishly. God said, no. And the Lord spoke unto Gad, David's seer, saying, Go and tell David, saying, Thus saith the Lord, I offer thee 3 things. Where'd it go here? That I may do it unto thee. Choose one. Oh, man. Choose one. You got to look at David's character here when he's choosing this punishment too. Excuse me. So Gad came unto David and saith, Thus saith the Lord, choose thee either 3 years famine, 3 months to be destroyed before thy foes, while at the sword of thine enemies, while the sword of mine enemies overtake thee, or else 3 days of the sword of the Lord, even the pestilence in the land, and the angel of the Lord destroying throughout all the coasts of Israel. Now therefore, advise thyself of what word I shall bring again to him that sent me. Tell me, David, what do you choose now, so I can go back and relay the message to God. The one contradiction that I will say, the other account of this, do you know it? Says 7 years famine. Most likely the explanation was they were in the middle of a 3-year famine already. That 4th year is that rebuilding year where you still basically have nothing, and then 3 more. That's when you look back and do the history. There are no contradictions, but in the middle of this famine, he says you can choose 3 more, and it adds the total to 7. So if you ever read back in the other account and you say, well, it says 7 here and 3 here, I just don't know what to do with that. They're already in the middle of one. So, what do you choose? What do you choose if you are a selfish king?
Something that won't affect you.
That's it. Something that won't affect you. Will the famine? Probably not. Probably not. David's wealthy enough to outlast that. He can get his food from any nation he wants. David and his own royal court and all that, there's nothing major. Lifestyle's not going to change very much. What about being overtaken by the enemies 3 months? Yeah. Probably not. David's safe. David's safe. In all reality, he's not out on the battlefield. So he chooses, and David said unto Gad, I am in a great strait. Let me now fall into the hand of the Lord, for great are his mercies, but let me not fall into the hand of man. A selfish man would have said, look here, whatever doesn't affect me, that's what I'm going to pick. But David knows by choosing to fall into the hands of a living God, it very well could affect him. But he said, God is merciful and full of grace, while man is not. Man is not. So he chose the 3 days, and then the Lord sent pestilence upon all Israel, and there fell of Israel 70,000 men. We don't really have any idea if these were all fighting men. It could be the elderly, but 70,000 men fell. David's numbering the people cost 70,000 lives. With great power comes great responsibility. To whom much is given, much is required. David, when David messes up, it costs a lot. When the king, the leader of Israel, messes up, it costs a lot. So, we keep going. He's going through, the angel of the Lord's going throughout all the coast, but he comes where? To Jerusalem. He comes to Jerusalem, and he says, I'm going to kill it. I'm going to wipe it out. But guess where he's at? He's right there. He's on the edge of the city, and he's looking down, and he's getting ready. Let's see here. Verse 15, and God sent an angel unto Jerusalem to destroy it. And as he was destroying, the Lord withheld, and he repented him of the evil, and said to the angel that destroyed, it is enough. Stay now thine hand. And the angel of the Lord stood by the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. You'll see another name, Araunah the Jebusite. Either way, this is a Jebusite. Probably a prominent member of the Jebusite family, because he owned that. He owned that mountain, that land. And David lifted up his eyes, verse 16, and saw the angel of the Lord stand between the earth and heaven, having sword drawn in his hand, stretched over Jerusalem. Then David and the elders of Israel, who were clothed in sackcloth, fell upon their faces. And David said unto God, is it not I that commanded the people to be numbered? Even I it is that has sinned and done evil indeed. But as for these sheep, what have they done? Let thine hand, I pray thee, O Lord my God, be on me and on my father's house, but not on thy people, that they should be plagued. David did not come up with an excuse. He didn't say, well, somebody should have told me that it was wrong. Because guess what? Somebody did tell him it was wrong. And they told him that it was wrong, and he took responsibility for it. And he begged for the mercy of God. Didn't try to get out of it. Whatever it was, he said, I have messed up, Lord. Please don't hurt any more people. Don't kill any more people. Think angels aren't powerful? He killed 70,000 people in 3 days. That's pretty powerful. Then the angel of the Lord commanded Gad to say to David that David should go up and set up an altar unto the Lord on the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. David's got to go up there and set up an altar. And David went up at the saying of Gad when he spoke the name of the Lord. And Ornan turned back and saw the angel, and his 4 sons with him hid themselves. Now Ornan was threshing wheat. And as David came to Ornan, Ornan looked and saw David and went out of the threshing floor and bowed himself down to David with his face to the ground. He knew who David was. He said, the king is coming, I'll bow down. Then David said to Ornan, give me the place, or grant me the place of the threshing floor, that I may build an altar therein unto the Lord. Thou shalt grant it me for the full price, that the plague may be stayed from the people. And Ornan said to David, take it, let my lord the king do what is good with it. He said, take it for free. I give thee the oxen for the burnt offerings, and the threshing instruments for the wood, and the wheat for the meat offering. I give it all. David could have said, that's great. Doesn't cost me anything now. But he didn't. King David said unto Ornan, nay, but I will verily buy it for the full price. For I will take not that which is thine for the Lord, nor offer burnt offerings without cost. Without cost. It will cost him something. So David gave to Ornan the place 600 shekels of gold by weight. When you read in the other account, it talks about a different price, but it's for different things. This one he offers the full price. The other one he's offering just, I think it's just the instruments. You've got one there where he's buying the threshing floor and the instruments, and then one basically where he's buying the whole thing. See, people say that, the Jew bought the land God gave him. It is Jewish. David purchased it. Can't argue with that. That would be a Muslim argument for today. What verse am I in? 26. And David built an altar there unto the Lord and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings and called upon the Lord. And he answered him from heaven by fire upon the altar of the wood of the burnt offering. The Lord commanded the angel, and he put his sword again into the sheath. This is where the angel stopped. And David built the altar there. That's where it was. And that becomes this place. This place, this mountain, this is Mount Moriah. This place is it's synonymous. We look at it and we say the Dome of the Rock, Jerusalem, the temple. It's none of those. It's about cost and a sacrifice and what is given to save people. David said, I'm not about to let all this go down without it costing me something. I brought it upon these people, and I've got to end it. And he obeyed God. We'll go down to verse 28. And at the time when David saw that the Lord had answered him in the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite, then he sacrificed there. For the tabernacle of Moses, made in the wilderness at the altar, it was at a high place in Gibeon, and David could not go there to inquire of God. And he was afraid of the sword of the angel of the Lord. And when you go to 2 Chronicles chapter 3 and verse 1, I'll just read it. You don't have to turn there. It says, after David has passed the torch to Solomon, Solomon began to build the house of the Lord at Jerusalem in Mount Moriah, where the Lord appeared unto David his father. In that place David had prepared in the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. Why is it there? Why is it that spot? Has nothing to do with Abraham. Abraham was on this mountain. Abraham was, and we're going to talk about where. And I'm telling you, when I went in to the garden tomb that's run by the British Bible Society, and they started saying some things, I was like, whoa, this is a little out there for me. But I got to reading and studying this. This is the event that inspired the building of the temple and the location of it. The location of the Holy of Holies was a place of sacrifice and cost and obedience to God. And that's what it was to be. It's what it was to stand for all of the lifetime of the temple until Christ came. This mountain is holy. It is a holy place. It was bought and paid for by a righteous man. He bought basically the salvation of the rest of Israel. He said, stay thy hand. I repent of what I did, and I ask for your mercy, Lord. And God commanded him, and he accepted it. He sent the fire down, and he accepted the sacrifice. And this is why we are where we are today, this site. But that's more or less the physical things that I wanted to share with you. But I don't ever want to leave without a spiritual aspect to all this. And that takes me back to verse 1, that no matter how far along we think we are, the devil's always there. When we've been saved 50 years, he's still there. He may have we may have gotten better at fighting him. By that time, I hope I have gotten better at resisting the devil and having him flee. So he'll come up with new ways, new subtle ways of pride to get to you. But as David says, it is better to fall into the hands of God and ask mercy and trust his mercy and grace than to fall into the hands of man who are evil. But Satan's always there. But he cannot win because of that mountain. He cannot win because of that mountain. And later on we're going to talk about what else happened on this mountain to ensure total victory. Total and complete victory. And I've done a little bit of that before. And then we're going to talk about the future, what's coming for us. And how, again, here, it will be another total, complete victory. This mountain is victory. This mountain is important. It is important to know why the world hates it so, because the devil hates it so. He hates everything it stands for. And he's got to do his best to erase it. And that's what he's done all the way through here. Let's get rid of the temple. Let's build a pagan shrine on it. We'll erase any history, any semblance that there ever was anything there. But guess what? God brought his people back. You can take God out of anything you want. Any organization, anything, but you cannot take God's people out of it. Period. They're always there, aren't they, Tom? I can remember we were on a cruise ship this last October, and we were really rocking. And I just said, leaning, and 3 or 4 women come down the hallway, and they finish the song. I thought that was great. How cool is that? We were in the middle of eating supper last night. 2 teenagers going to a prom, and it was awesome. He was in a ball cap and tennis shoes. You know how it is. It was cool. But the best part about it is she grabbed his hand, and he took his hat off, and she prayed with him. God's people are everywhere. Victory has been assured because of this place. Any thoughts or comments? It's 7:01. I didn't think I would get through it, but we did.
I'm going to sing a song.
All right. Come this way. There's lots of chords over here.
I'll go there. I have good news to bring, and that is why I sing. My joys with you I'll share. I'm gonna take a trip on the good old gospel ship and go sailing through the air. I'm gonna take a trip on the good old gospel ship. I'm going far beyond the sky. I'm gonna shout and sing until the heavens ring when I'm bidding this world goodbye. I can scarcely wait. I know I'll not be late, for I spend my time in prayer. And when my ship comes in, I'll leave this world of sin and go sailing through the air. I'm going to take a trip on the good old gospel ship. I'm going far beyond the sky. I'm going to shout and sing until the heavens ring when I'm bidding this world goodbye.
Yes, that's right.
If you're ashamed of me, you have no cause to be, for with Christ I am an heir. You'll sure be left behind when I'm bidding this world goodbye. I'm gonna shout and sing until the heavens ring when I'm bidding this world goodbye.
Amen.
Anybody else?
I think Bill wants to sing a song. I bet.
Didn't you want to sing a song? Well, anybody else got anything? We good? I'm going to call on Ben again. It's been a while, so he needs to step up. Ben, will you close us in prayer?
Lord, thank you so much for your goodness. Thank you, Lord, for all you do. Thank you so much for so much that lies ahead, Father. The promises that we have to rest on, Father. I am so excited for the second coming. I'm so excited for what you're going to bring in. Father, I pray that we'll continue to study, we'll continue to understand the importance of the Temple Mount. And Father, help us to tell others who are uninformed, who do not understand the importance of the Temple Mount. And help us to look for the signs, just to be ready to see you face to face. Father, I pray in Jesus' name that we'll apply the lessons that were taught tonight to our hearts. And as Jordan said, help us, Father, to just to be aware of our surroundings, be aware of Satan's darts, and Father, help us to not slip into sin. Help us to be so aware of our surroundings. Help us to be careful. Help us to obey even when we don't feel like it. Father, please strengthen us and guide us now. And again, Father, help us to earnestly seek your face and help us to be ready to see you face to face. Father, be with us this week. Be with us in all that we do. Strengthen us and guide us. Bring us back on Wednesday. And again, we praise you, we glorify you, and help us all to become the Christians whom you want us to become. Help us to grow closer to you. And Father, help us to look to you and hold us fast, dear Lord. Thank you for your goodness. And in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.